to the Pat Mayo Experience Week 15 Waiver Wire Pickup Power Rankings and Week 14 recap. And there's a lot to recap. In my mind, Week 14, the viewing slate of Week 14 was by far the best of the season. The early games, a lot of fun, a lot of close games, plus that stupid snow game, which we'll get to a little bit later on. The afternoon slate had Eagles and Rams. The Sunday Nighter was awesome to watch. Like, I can't remember a week this season where from 1 o'clock all the way through the conclusion of the Sunday night game turned out to be so entertaining just across the board. It was awesome. Hopefully you moved on in your fantasy playoffs. I took a few L's in some of mine, and if you had Elvin Kamara, you probably did in some of yours too. Or if you just played against DeAndre Hopkins or Ben Roethlisberger or Alex Collins, or for God forbid someone started Jamal Williams, Rod Smith, or Jonathan Stewart against you. This is fantasy playoffs. This is what happens. I feel like people forget that every single year. I do want to let people know there is going to be no waiver wire column for Week 16, as you know, waivers don't pass until Tuesday night. All my rankings come out on Tuesday, so you can just use the rankings as a waiver wire guide, since it will be the last week of the season. There's no ranking debate show for Week 17. If you play into Week 17 in your fantasy league, newsflash, you're a loser. All right? Don't do that. It's awful. And I need to let everyone know, you got to give the episode a like. Still tune in to this show, because we'll be recapping with, well, let's bring him in. Tim Andergust!
Tim Andergust.
That is not my name.
Do you play into Week 17? That sounds like something you would do.
You know that I don't.
That's true. I mean, I don't know that you don't. I know in the leagues that you play in with me that you don't.
I don't. I wouldn't even want to play Week 17, even though in leagues where the playoffs are 2 weeks long per matchup. I still wouldn't want to do it.
Okay, so for Week 17, no, I'm with you on that one too. I mean, in that case, it's best to do the 2-week playoff like 13, 14, 15, 16. If you're gonna go down that route. Week 17 coverage, I know we're a few weeks away, but just to let people know, I will have a Draftkings show that week, and Tim, Jeff, and I will be doing the pick show to preview Week 17 for everyone, and then I'm going on vacation for like a few days until the playoffs actually start. Big news though. This is what everyone out there can do, and we saw it yesterday, and we'll talk to Tim a little bit about it, but you have the power to influence the 2017 Custy Awards. No matter where you go, whether it's my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme, on Twitter @thepme, in the description of this show, whether it's video, whether it's podcast version, you will find the link to vote for the 2017 Custy Awards, and there are some good ones. There is so many Ander curses this season that there are 10 separate categories, and they are tough to pick from. There's even one with me, with my bad takes, which were probably good takes until you tended to agree with them, and then boom, out the window. So I got custed by association on those ones. That just makes me sad. Although Saxonville looking like the most reverse cursed of 2017 right now.
I hate them.
I know, and they're going to continue to win until you switch sides.
I will not switch sides unless they play the Patriots at some point. Then I'll be forced to.
Well, that's probably your AFC Championship game then. Saxonville versus Patriots.
That would be so depressing. That would just make me sad.
Would you tune out?
No, I'd have to watch, but I would not be pleased.
All right, so where do you want to start here? Everyone, we always do the power poll every single week, or we try to do the power poll every single week, and then we forget half the time. But there were many a week where Tim had Philadelphia at number 1. And we ran a contest for when we get the new studio, we start giving out some prizes to people that in the comment section, which week did you have that the Ander curse would finally hit Philadelphia? And as it turns out, the answer was Week 14.
Oh yeah, of course. It's my fault that poor Carson Wentz is injured, not Mark Barron and the Los Angeles Rams.
No, I'm pretty sure it's you. I mean, there's enough of a track record with you cursing these things that it had to come to fruition at some point. I mean, look at the poor Titans. The Titans are just running on fumes. They're also terrible, by the way.
Yeah, well, everyone in the AFC that isn't the Steelers or Patriots are terrible, so take your pick.
Well, the Ravens didn't look so bad.
The Ravens are okay, but that defense obviously looked like it missed Jimmy Smith last night and we yielded 39 to the Steelers, which, I mean, yeah, the Steelers have an excellent offense, but that was not the showing we all expected from that game. We thought it would be 20-19, not 39-38.
Well, who do you have in your power poll? What's your top 5?
It's relatively unchanged. I decided to make a flop at 1 and put New England now at 1 instead of Philly. put Philly at 2 because they're still a really good team. Nick Foles is still a perfectly fine quarterback. I'm not too worried about the Eagles. Steelers 3. Then I have Rams 4, Vikings 5. I chose to throw all the NFC South teams out. I still don't know which of those 3 teams I want to put there. They're all basically co-equal at this point. So I'm going to let them sort themselves out. So I kept them all out. So Patriots, Eagles, Steelers, Rams, Vikings.
The Eagles are way too high. Nick Foles reeks.
Nick Foles does not reek. He actually played well yesterday. And, of course, in his career has played quite good football in the past. So
Nick Foles had one Chip Kelly-infused season, and after that he's been garbage.
There are probably, 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league that are backups better than him. Like, when you
sure, but he's a backup. You're going from the MVP to Nick fucking Foles.
Well, it's unideal, but the guy still had 27 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions that season with Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's great. You're not getting that Nick Foles. Hate to tell you.
He doesn't need to be that Nick Foles. Taking a hit from Wentz hurts, but you know what? The Eagles, if they win next week against the Giants, will have basically home field wrapped up and don't have to play another competitive game until mid-January.
Yeah, unfortunately, when they have to play those games again, they have Nick Foles as their quarterback. Probably. We still don't know if we still don't actually know if Wentz is finished.
No, we don't.
We all just assume he is finished.
Yeah, I mean that's the likeliest outcome. That gives the Eagles 4 to 5 weeks to get him ready to play in the second round at home, which is a very tough place to play in the playoffs at Philadelphia. So no, the Eagles were the favorite. Now I think they're now slightly under the favorite, but they're fine. The Eagles will be okay. The good thing for them, they traded for someone like Jay Ajayi, who they're going to lean on far more heavily now than they were going to before.
Well, Jay Ajayi needs to have a really good final 3 weeks of the season to get to the 1,500 rushing yard barrier. I think he only needs to average something like 270 yards a game.
Yeah, that is not going to happen. I think he's just slightly under halfway to the 1,500 or something.
That's a bet that's turning out terrible for you. I'm now actually ahead in all of the bets now that Jacksonville has taken the division lead.
It's true. Two or three of the bets are very, very close, but one is not.
Well, I mean, the Dez versus Mike Evans bet, Dez is now up by like 17 points or something.
No, like 8, 7, something like that after yesterday I looked.
Well, Dez had a touchdown and 70 yards, and Mike Evans had 2 catches for 20 yards, and Dez was winning going into the week. So I think 7 is probably pushing it a little bit.
I only said because I was looking at the Yahoo stats yesterday, and that's what it said.
You're looking at the stats in our league. That's not what we're using. We're using actual PPR stats.
Yeah, but they can't be that dissimilar.
They are. They're hugely dissimilar.
Well, they're not hugely dissimilar. They're slightly different.
They're not slightly. For every 1 point, for every 10 yards, you get a point in PPR scoring, like in regular scoring.
I don't know what you want to hear. You're ahead. I think you might win that bet. Fine. Okay. Great.
So you need Julius Thomas to have a good night on Monday night?
Yes, and he's only back by, I think, 8 points in that, and he's got a game in hand with tonight. So we'll see. That's close.
That's true, but I mean, the way that I envision the Hooper versus Julius Thomas bet going is like how they both have performed most of the year. That they're probably just going to have stinkers the rest of the season, and then it just won't matter.
That could very well happen.
I believe Hooper is now, after playing in the Thursday Nighter and having like 5 points or something, I think he's like 14 ahead of Julius Thomas.
Yeah, I don't think it was that many, but anyway, it's close.
All right. I mean, the fact that you don't even know what site you're looking at in order to determine the points leads me to believe that you have no idea how much anyone is ahead by.
Well, I just used our league to get a general sense.
But you know that our league has the wonkiest scoring.
Whatever. I don't care. I'm not too worried about it till we get to week 16. Then after week 16, then I really have to bear down and figure out the numbers. Till then, there's just too much in the air.
Well, you know what's going to happen here is that Jacksonville is going to lose to Tennessee, yet somehow they're still going to win the division because Tennessee will lose to some other garbage team.
Well, the Titans, I think, I know they have the 49ers, the Rams, which is a tough game, and Jacksonville. But Jags don't have an easy schedule. I think that last game of the season, you better hope that that's the game that gets flexed into prime time.
Yeah, well, you're out here, Andrew. Okay, let's get right to it. Actually, I want to give my power poll first. So I have New England at number 1. I have Minnesota at number 2. I actually think that was a tough loss. The offensive line got completely shaken up. I have to see how that turns out. But if they can get back to... They had 4 guys playing out of position on their offensive line yesterday, and it really affected the way they were able to handle the pass rush from the Panthers. The Panthers played well, though. The Panthers are the ultimate when you think they're going to lose, they're going to win team, by the way.
Yeah, they're very inconsistent. I agree with that.
Just every time, like, even 2 weeks ago with the Saints, it's like, oh, the Panthers are in a good spot to, like, either not knock off the Saints or cover. They get waxed. And then against Minnesota, it's like, oh, Minnesota just beat Atlanta. Carolina's reeling. No, Carolina's going to come out and look awesome. And Cam's going to single-handedly win the game by, just putting a head fake on someone and taking off for 60 yards. But I still think that Minnesota, they have the capability of the most upside of all those NFC teams because Case Keenum's been really good. Case Keenum's been excellent this season. It's shocking. And the rest of their team is so good around it. Then I go Pittsburgh. Then I go the Rams. And one of the main reasons that I have Minnesota above the Rams is that Minnesota waxed the Rams when they ended up playing each other. So that would be my case there. And then for number 5, I have Jacksonville. But you could talk me into the Chargers, who look pretty damn good recently.
I mean, I would think that the Saints are better than either of those two teams.
Are they? How do you know that?
The Falcons are better than either of those two teams. Like on a neutral field, the Saints would be what? 5-point favorites against Jacksonville? 6-point favorites against Jacksonville?
I don't think so. They might be 3.
Okay, then you're conceding that they're better.
I'm saying I'm telling you what I think the line is. I would bet Jacksonville in that game.
The Saints would definitely be favored against the Chargers. Are a deeply flawed team. We're going to see that coming. I mean, good for them that they're making a run. They are a deeply flawed team.
What is it with the Chargers that you think that they're so deeply flawed? They have one of the 3 best pass rushes in the league. They've vastly improved their run defense since Denzel Perriman came back in Week 10. They've jumped from like 30th in DVOA to like 18th in DVOA, which means they've been like top 5 against the run over that period. They have one of the best lockdown corners in the game. Phillip Rivers is playing absolutely out of his mind. Melvin Gordon still rushing the ball. Eckler has been a great change of pace, and the receiving core looks excellent. Hunter Henry is only getting better over the middle too. Like, I don't think they're a deeply flawed team at all. I think that they're one of the most consistent teams, just in every facet of the game.
Yeah, but their season's going to end on Saturday night, so I'm not too worried about them. Like, I understand what you're saying, but like, I think you're being a prisoner of the moment. The Saints are clearly.
What do you mean on the moment? They've been awesome for like two months now.
Put the Saints up against the Chargers, the Saints win 75% of the time. It's that simple. You put the Falcons up against the Chargers, they win 60 to 55% of the time.
The Falcons couldn't even beat the Chargers last year when the Falcons were awesome.
The Falcons are really good again. Again, the Falcons have more talent on offense. The Falcons, at every turn on the offensive side, I like the Falcons. I think that Chargers are being overhyped. I still think the Chiefs are better than the Chargers.
Well, the Chiefs aren't very good. They just happen to play one of the worst teams in football in the Raiders.
Yeah, well, but so what? That's a team that had beat them earlier in the year, and they beat them more soundly than the scoreboard showed. And they're favored to beat the Chargers this week. So
yeah, you probably want to bet the Chargers. They're a vastly superior team.
Yes, because this is one thing we've learned over time. You can trust it's the Chargers to win big games. Right? Okay, sure.
Yeah, listen. Would you like to make that wager now? Because I know someone else who would like to make that wager with you.
No, because I don't trust the Chiefs that much either. I mean, I think they're both bad teams. Like I don't think either. They're all one and done teams. Chargers could win on Sunday, sure, or Saturday, but they're all one and done teams. I don't really care about them.
What do you mean they're one and done teams? You said Jacksonville can't win anything, and one of them are probably gonna have to play Jacksonville.
That would also be a depressing playoff game.
And then you're gonna have the Titans are gonna make the playoffs, and everyone's just gonna steamroll them.
Well, you say that, but we'll see.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, yes, the Chargers suck, and the Titans are really good, Tim. That's a very sensible thing. I don't think Chargers
suck. I think the Chargers are a mediocre team. They're a middle-of-the-pack team, as their record indicates. They have one more win than they have losses. That's who they are.
They started the year 0-4.
Well, that counts.
Sure, but you're really putting that much stock into September football.
Pardon me? I'm putting some stock into it. You have to. They played this year. You can't write it off completely.
Oh, my God. All right.
You have to. That's just – you cannot analyze the NFL any other way.
All right. Most people tend to look at what has happened recently to see where teams are trending. No, that's not called recency bias, Tim. Recency bias would be really letting whatever happened immediately affect what happened in your projections going forward. We now have a sample of like 8 weeks where the Chargers have been one of the top 5 teams in football. And you're like, no, they were bad week 2. They can't be good.
Oh, that of course, you're misrepresenting my argument. But anyway.
I'm sorry. They were bad week 1. They can't be good.
Trying to see what their weighted DVOA is, because weighted DVOA takes your position heavily into account here.
Yeah, but you only believe that when it agrees with you. When it doesn't agree with you, you say there must be some sort of flaw in the system.
Yeah, according to weighted DVOA, they're 11th overall.
Yeah, they suck.
So
they're terrible.
So they're just below top 10 team. Okay, I buy that.
No, you don't. You just said they were mediocre.
It means they're nowhere close to the top 5, which is what we were actually discussing.
I think that they are the 5th or 6th best team in the league right now. They're the team I would not want to play. Them in Saxonville, man, they're going to be a tough out. No one wants to play them.
I would take Baltimore over either of those two teams in the playoffs. But anyway.
I mean, I've already seen Jacksonville beat Baltimore by like 40, so.
Yeah, that game was at London in September.
Oh, but that game doesn't count.
Means that game doesn't count because.
So that game doesn't count, but the games from like week 1 are super influential right now.
Oh, it counts, but it was in London, which is kind of wonky. And in the playoffs, I trust Joe Flacco, who's won a Super Bowl and has had a pretty good playoff career record over either of those two guys. I'm sorry, I do.
Listen, this is the best defense that Phillip Rivers has had the entire time he's there. It might be spread out. I mean, he had Gates and he had LT, but he only had 2 guys to throw to. I mean, who else was he throwing to those years? They had McCardell for like a bit, but that was about it. He has like a legit 4 options that he can throw to at any time. And Keenan Allen, I think you're sleeping on how good Keenan Allen has been.
Keenan Allen is having a marvelous season. I'm not sleeping on it at all.
All right. Just sounds like you're sleeping on the Chargers. Continue to sleep on the Chargers in Jacksonville, and Jeff and I will continue to win money by betting on Jacksonville and the Chargers.
Neither are top 5 teams, and you strain credulity to say they're a top 5 team.
I would take both over Philadelphia right now with shitty Nick Foles.
Okay, well, I wouldn't. I would think Philly would be heavily favored against either team right now.
That's great, Tim. You realize that that's not how it turns out. Just like yesterday, the heavily favored Cincinnati Bengals were free money, according to you. I mean, hey, they were favored by 6 points. They're way better than the Bears.
They are. They probably are better than the Bears, but
yeah,
not
they were. You know what? You know what? Maybe it's my recency bias getting into it, but yes, they are significantly better than the Bears.
They're significantly better. They are a better team, but my heavens, they were not yesterday. The Bears played the most complete game I think they've played probably all season. And all credit to them. They played. I mean, listen, Trubisky had his best game of the year. Everything clicked for the Bears, and they earned every bit of it.
So I played the anti-Cust free money parlay. You got too big on your britches last week. Coming off the week of Cust, week 13 will go down as your week. Everything went your way as the Ander curse was off killing poor John B. Anderson, just taking rid of that guy. It took all the curse's power. You left the country, the curse went with you. It went on vacation too. You come back home, and the curse... Was this the most cursed week of the season?
Well, since I don't concede there is a curse...
Oh, for someone who doesn't concede there's a curse, you tried real hard to reverse curse the Jets, but people knew... The curse knew what you were trying to do. And of course, the Jets just lost by even worse than they were losing at the time.
I was just merely expressing my view.
No, you weren't. I mean, as a team, as the team you made as your super lock, the Jets, didn't really turn out that way.
Carolina's the hardest, the team that always loses when you think they're going to win. I mean, the Jets are right there with them.
No, they aren't. Being able to predict the Jets has been really easy this season. Out of that 2-week stretch, I think weeks 3 and 4, which, I mean, I put a lot of stock into, so I actually think the Jets are one of the best teams in football because they won both those games. But you picked those 2 games right, and I think you've been wrong on the Jets every other week.
Yeah, they're incredibly hard to figure out.
No, they're not. They're incredibly easy to figure out. If you say they're going to win, they're going to get rolled, and if you think they're going to lose, they win.
No, they're going to lose this week, that's for sure.
Who do they play this week?
They're at the Saints in the Superdome. They're definitely losing.
Yeah, they're probably going to lose that game. Although, I mean, the Saints, I mean, what if they end up winning that one? How good are the Saints then?
If the Saints can get Kamara back, I mean, it would shock nobody if the Saints made the Super Bowl. Like, they're that good. They have Drew Brees. You have Drew Brees, you have a better quarterback than maybe every team other than the Packers and Patriots. Like, you're in really good shape.
Yeah, I there's something with the Saints that I just don't buy, and maybe it is Kamara that makes everything go, and maybe that's why they look so stale on Thursday. Maybe because it was on Thursday night. But like, I mean, you said Atlanta's really good. Matt Ryan blows, by the way. He's back to being Matt Ryan from every other year except last year. Yeah,
I mean, he's played. I mean. That's why it was so impressive the Falcons managed to win that game Thursday, because he played terribly.
Yeah, he's been playing terribly all season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's nowhere close to the MVP season that he was having, and yet the Falcons hold all these neat tie breaks over the Packers and the Seahawks. I mean, the Falcons have a really excellent chance of making the playoffs.
Sure, but they still have to win these games.
They do have to win these games, but they're all divisional games. If the Falcons win out, they win the division. It's that simple.
All right, so let's get to the big news. The anti-cust parlay that I played on the show on Thursday, where I just blindly took the opposite of your money line parlay, and only the Houston Texans were not able to come through. 4 for 5 the other way. That's a real bad start for you to the day. When Cincinnati started losing so early, did you feel like you were in trouble?
For the parlay? Oh, God, yeah.
No, I just mean for the entire week, because, that was really just the base of it all. Like you mentioned to me before we came on air. Cincinnati, your free money Cincinnati just getting rolled over, steamrolled by the awful Bears. That was just a sign of things to come.
In retrospect, it should have been that way, but I did not foresee it that way. I was focused on other stuff.
Okay. Where is the tweet? I got to find it here. Yeah. Is it your most popular tweet of all time?
Oh, God, no.
What was more popular than this tweet?
Oh, the Jordan Spieth tweet. I'm pretty sure the Falcons tweet was more popular. The one where I had when I was laughing about no hole-in-ones at Augusta because that went to Cold Takes Exposed.
That's true. There's a lot. This is what's making voting on the Custy so difficult, by the way.
I wouldn't know. I think it would be unethical for me to vote, so I'm not voting.
Oh, so you haven't even read through all of the nominees, have you?
Oh, I have read through. I have read through them and then not cast a ballot.
Because they got updated yesterday.
Yeah, I'm aware.
So at 4:35 p.m., which would have been 3:35 Eastern time, I think so. Anyway, the Browns were up 21-7 against the Packers on Sunday, and the Browns were gearing up for their first win of the season. I actually thought the Browns were going to end up winning because you wouldn't take my bet on the show, and every time that you refuse to take any of my bets, you always end up winning that bet and then getting nothing of it, and then by the time you finally come around to making a bet, you just end up losing it. So I felt like the Browns were in pretty good shape here until, like I said, up 21.
Joke's on you then.
What's that?
The joke's on you then. You would have won.
Yeah, that's fine. I won betting on the Packers anyway, because I was very confident after you would curse them on Thursday's show that there's no possible way that they could win. However, at 3:35 p.m. Eastern time and 4:30 your time, you tweeted at TimAnderson87, so everyone can go check it out. Give it a like and a retweet, by the way, if you haven't already done that yet. It's easy to find out. The Browns are guaranteed to win this game. Congratulations to them on their first win of the season. # I knew.
Do I get any credit for refusing to delete this tweet and standing bravely in the face of criticism?
Yes, you're such a hero for not deleting your tweets, Tim. What moral fiber you have that you're just willing to throw things against the wall on Twitter, commit to them, and if they don't work out, get rid of them.
I am willing to take my lumps. Listen, I don't know what you want me to say. It's 21-7. The Browns were the right side in the game.
They were clearly the right side of the game. They didn't even cover. I like whenever you lose, but you were still on the right side. You're like the Chris Jericho of betting. You never actually win. You just get a lot of moral victories.
There's no moral victory. Listen, no one would contend that the Packers were the right side in that game, but the Packers, that happens in gambling. There are bad beats. It happens. The Browns are a bad team, which is in part why they let this game whittle away. It was irritating to see, but. What do you want to say? It was annoying, man. The Browns deserved that game. They gave up 20 unanswered points rather inexplicably. We move along. If people think this is in any way going to dampen my confidence in making picks, it won't. I'm not concerned.
Well, I think the people are glad to hear that. I have a working theory, and I told you this, that whenever you make a definitive statement like this on any sort of game, on a person, on an outcome of anything, I actually think that you are right 100% of the time. You just physically cannot process that information. So you do know inside you what the answer is, yet when it comes out, it's something the opposite. And you're only actually right with your picks 10% of the time when it's something definitive like this. So fading you when you really make a bold statement, because you actually do know the outcome, you just happen to process it incorrectly. But by you processing it incorrectly, we can then all know which is the right side.
I don't understand. I know what you're saying in one sense, but in the other sense, like just getting lost in translation in my brain.
Yes, that's exactly what is happening.
I'm basically like Bill Murray.
I guess so.
Except, my mind is not a terribly overrated movie, but otherwise.
Well, it's now, if you watch it again, it's now just a terribly racist movie.
I haven't watched it in 10 years. I didn't really like it when it came out, so I can't imagine I'd like it on rewatching.
Yeah, well, it didn't age well, put it that way.
Fair enough.
All right, so then, in the later set of games, Rams-Eagles, which, would you say that's a Game of the Year candidate?
Yeah, oh, certainly.
I had a tremendous time watching that game. Almost as much fun as I had watching Saxonville beat Seattle, but,
Again, I didn't see what the live in-game betting was, but I feel like Seattle's probably the favorite once the Jags punted the ball back to them with Seattle down 6 and Russell Wilson with the ball. Didn't everybody think that the Seahawks were going to win that game at that point?
Well, the Seahawks went away from what they were doing well. Like, the Seahawks couldn't do anything all game. The only player who looked good for them was Mike Davis, who was just running like a madman and then had like a 50-yard catch called back, which really screwed me in a bunch of matchups. Anyway, let's put that aside. With Seattle, like, they had their most success just bombing the ball in the fourth quarter and just getting behind the defense, but then they stopped doing that.
Yeah, there's this whole thing with how the Jaguars' secondary defense is so great. Like, it's good, but it's not elite in any sense. Seattle was picking.
What are you talking about? It's not elite in any sense. They're the number one pass defense.
Yeah, I wonder if that will be true after this week, after getting burned for not one but two 50 or 60-yard bombs. Like, I think that's going to take a hit.
Well, the only team that they're competing with to be the best pass defense is Baltimore, who got worked even worse.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, but the Ravens are good. Okay.
It's not
I feel like that's your comeback.
It's not my opinion that the Ravens are good. I just think the Jags. Seattle tore them apart in the second half, which didn't surprise me because I think Jacksonville was overrated. But I'll admit I was certain, and everything I was seeing on Twitter, everyone seemed to think when the Seahawks got that ball back with 3 minutes left, or whatever it was, I think we all thought, well, Russell Wilson's just going to do what he does and lead another fourth quarter comeback. And it was actually to Jacksonville's credit that didn't happen.
And then who was it on the Seahawks who tried to fight all the fans after the game?
Jefferson.
Number 99. He was not impressed. He put himself into that situation, though.
Yes, but anybody who throws anything at a player should be banned from a football stadium for life. That's inexcusable.
That's really hard to enforce, by the way.
It's not easy to enforce, but, there's video evidence of who this guy is. And, I suppose he could be doxxed and we could figure out who this person is. But just as a word of warning, if you go to an NFL game and you throw anything at a player, you are a piece of garbage and you should never be allowed back in the stadium. You should feel bad about yourself.
Because they're a piece of garbage, does that mean they should launch themselves at the players? No, I'm with you. I'm with you. If you throw anything at players, you should be kicked out. You should be banned to the point where you can be banned. But, he really just should have went to the locker room. That really would have.
Yes, he should have.
Just that situation doesn't occur if he just goes to the locker room.
Yeah, there's guilt. Everyone is guilty. What does the prince say at the end of Romeo and Juliet? All are punished. Like, everyone's at fault here, including him, including the fans. Like, punishment should be doled out along.
It still says guilty, and guilty is spelled wrong.
It's written on a cocktail napkin.
Finally, the game I want to talk about was that stupid Bills-Colts game, which apparently the only person who's ever been able to run in snow ever is LaShawn McCoy.
I was going to say, I usually with you with your view that bad weather doesn't matter. It's wind that's important, but, if we get snow like that, that does matter.
Well, the wind was also 30 miles per hour.
The wind was vicious, but the snow clearly affected everything. Just the amount of snow on the ground affected everything. Like they were saying during the game, the defense has a big advantage in this kind of situation, blah, blah, blah. Yes, but we only get a game like that once every couple of years. So I don't know how valuable it is for other interpretations the next time we get snow.
No, see, I would actually disagree with that. The reason that the defenses look so good in that game, the snow, I always think the snow benefits the offense. Bad weather in terms of rain and poor footing always benefits the offense because they know where they're going. The problem with that game was the winds were swirling up between 25 and 40 miles per hour, and you couldn't throw. The fact that you couldn't throw, you could just collapse the box on everyone and just sell out to stop the run. That's why there were so few passing attempts. That let's say it was just a bunch of snow, even when we saw at the end of the game, when the wind died down, they were able to throw the ball again. So I think it had to do more with the wind, with there being no sort of offensive impact through the air in that game. They had to run the ball because there was no visibility, the wind was swirling, and you couldn't do anything through the air. You had to keep it on the ground, or it was just a fool's errand. It was going to be an incomplete pass. But I will take a fantasy stance on this, and I said this before the game, because people were like, oh, gotta play Colts defense. Oh, gotta play Bills defense. No, that is not what you want to do in these situations where you know the other team is going to run the ball 90% of the time. When you have a fantasy defense, you want to be a team that has a decent pass rush, that can get pressure on the quarterback, and preferably are favorites in a game where they're winning so the other team has to throw the ball 40 times. That's what you're looking for fantasy points. And the Colts scored about 6 points. The Bills scored 4 fantasy points. Like, if you're playing for a shutout, that's not a great way to play fantasy defense.
I'm with you 100% on that.
So anytime this comes up, especially when there are two bad defenses going at each other, and the one thing that really made no sense to me, and one of the reasons I think Shady is good in the snow is because he's from Pennsylvania, and most football players are from like Texas or Florida or California or Alabama. He grew up playing in the snow. I think that would help. I mean, I think anyone from the Northeast can kind of figure out, like, if you've ever played football and you're from that area, which we are, that, like, I can remember games playing in like a foot of snow, and just you kind of get used to it. You understand the footing, or even if you're just walking around in snow all the time in your day-to-day life, you know that just one little cut, and boom, like, you just need to take little steps like Shady was doing, make one little move, and just run in a straight line for as long as possible. And like, you start getting these guys moving like horizontally, and just they're falling over their feet. They have no sense of balance, which was shocking to me. That I really thought Joe Webb would have been more effective in that spot, and I thought that Jacoby Brissett would have been more effective in that spot if they had just ran the read option the entire time. Like, the only thing that Joe Webb can do is run the ball. Why not do some read option and roll him out? Get him rolling out off tackle with bootlegs every single time, and either give it to Shady or keep it and run it off tackle. Like, the fact they weren't just running that or putting Shady in shotgun and running the Wildcat every single play made no real sense to me.
I think I agree with everything you've said, but I will say, despite how bad of a game those teams are, that game was impossible to stop watching. It was addictive. You know, if you're a football fan, I know there's a bunch of games going on. It's the fantasy playoffs, but your natural reaction was to be torn back to watch what was going on in that game because it's so foreign to what we're used to watching. It's very, and that happened in the Eagles-Lions game a few years ago. Like, no matter what else is going on in your football world, when that game is taking place, you just naturally gravitate towards back watching it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It visually looks awesome. It was funny to see like some of the tweets from the game or some of the Snapchats. People who drove down to Buffalo. I knew a bunch that drove down from Toronto to Buffalo, and just they couldn't see anything in the stands. There was zero visibility.
And I'm sure their drive home was a blast.
Oh yeah, I mean that would have been the week to camp out outside the Walmart by the Ralph.
Basically, that's all you can do. You think you're getting home, you might as well just set up shop wherever you are. And, of course, the poor Colts got absolutely screwed by the referees.
Yes, I would actually agree with you on that. And they screwed I had the Colts +3, and I did a mini-ander curse on that one. I was just, because they were going for 2, I was like, this is great. Whether they get it or not, they're going to cover. And then they got it, then got the penalty, and then got the extra point, which looked like it was going to miss. That was like a Bubba Watson out of the woods, like, hook shot from the Masters.
It was the greatest extra point. I claimed it was the greatest extra point I'd ever seen made. Because Vinatieri knew it was good. When the Bills were celebrating, he was also celebrating. He knew it was good. That's weird. We had 2 games yesterday, 2 overtime games, where it was a touchdown that was needed to cover the spread and happen.
You know what's kind of nuts? Buffalo is approximately 100 miles from Toronto. It was really nice here yesterday.
Yeah, well, because it's funny the way lake effect snow works. Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Cleveland always get worse weather than on the north side of the lake. I don't know why that is.
Well, the Buffalo's on, we're on Lake Ontario, like right on the lake. Buffalo's on the other side, but they're not on Lake Ontario. They're on what?
No, they're on Lake Erie. But
they're on Erie, but they're right on Erie. So they get the worst of both worlds. They get like the north wind coming up from Lake Erie. Then they get all like the cold Canada wind coming down from Lake Ontario to hit them. But like I was looking at the forecast, even like Niagara Falls wasn't hit all that hard, but it was like just Buffalo.
That is true. So I don't like Rochester, which is directly across the water from Toronto. It gets worse weather than Toronto does. It's just weird how it works like that.
Yeah, but then the city of Rochester hires Celino and Barnes, or even Jim the Hammer Shapiro, and then it sues the snow.
And when I saw the Buffalo game, which I don't know about you, but I guess I wasn't aware of just how bad the weather was at that game until like basically kickoff. Cleveland didn't have any. I assumed that there'd be snow all around. It was just isolated, to the 30 miles around Orchard Park. It was very strange, but fun though. I mean, we probably won't get another game like that all year, but it was a blast.
No, see, I like it like once every few years, or even once a year to get like that snow game.
Yeah, once a season.
That's nice. Maybe we'll get it next week with Patriots and Steelers. Is that a Sunday night or it's not, is it?
No, it's a Sunday afternoon. They'd rather put the Cowboys and Raiders on Sunday night.
Oh, the Raiders.
Yeah, that's disgraceful. But anyway.
I mean, they probably wouldn't rather put that game on Sunday night. I bet you CBS protected the Patriots Steelers, if I had to guess.
But Seahawks Rams was also out there too for them to take.
They didn't take that. I see. I think
LA's a bigger market than Boston or Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but no one gives a shit about the Rams.
LA's a front-running city. You better believe they love that team right now.
Sure, anyone who loves that team right now is going to go to the game and watch it potentially, or is it in Seattle?
It's at Seattle.
But the big thing is, it was like we talked about when the Packers and Steelers were in the Sunday Nighter a few weeks ago, that you have the second and third most popular teams in the league, just nationally, playing in one game. Even if they're terrible, you don't flex them out. Now, with the Raiders and Cowboys, you have the most popular team and probably the fourth most popular team. Just there's such a built-in fan base that no matter how bad that game is going to be, and NBC is going to push it like, oh, Dallas is probably going to make the playoffs, which they're not.
They were doing that last night.
Yeah, of course they were. They're upselling the game, but this game doesn't need any upselling because the two teams that are playing have such large fan bases across the country that it's going to do good ratings regardless.
Oh, I have no doubt it's going to do good ratings. I understand all of that. I'm just saying from my perch as a viewer, I'm disappointed that they did that. But I understand why it happened.
Yeah, like if you flexed in Rams and Seahawks, it would get lower ratings than Cowboys Raiders. It just would. And that's sad, but that's how it works.
Yeah, no, that's all true. It's also an interconference game, which, again, are the worst things to have on Sunday night, but yet we've had 1,000 of them this year. It's all annoying.
You want to get into the waiver wire pickups?
Yeah, I think we've gone through enough of the travails of my week.
All right. Honestly, there's no real must-gets at running back when it comes to the waiver wire. Nothing really remains unchanged for me at the top. Mike Davis is still available in 70% of leagues. And honestly, if you're playing in a league where Mike Davis wasn't picked up, no one else on this list should really matter to you. But Mike Davis is number one on the list. Number two is Theo Riddick. That's assuming Amir Abdullah continues to sit. He was basically a healthy scratch yesterday, so Kerwin Williams, Rod Smith, Peyton Barber, who actually outsnapped Doug Martin when Doug Martin got benched. Wayne Gallman, he of 10 targets yesterday, comes in at number 6. Corey Clement, James Conner as the handcuff. Austin Eckler as the handcuff. And then Danny Woodhead. The only real situation to monitor going forward, and I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but in that Chargers and Skins game, Byron Marshall injured his hamstring on just a weird kickoff. He was returning the kickoff, he took a step out of the end zone and basically blew out his hamstring. I don't know the extent of his injury, but it didn't look good. And then in the fourth quarter, Samaje Perine hurt his stomach, and then all of a sudden there's this guy, LaShawn Daniels Jr. Did you see this guy?
I was going to ask you who that was, actually.
Yeah, so he is the only healthy running back Washington has, but he spells his name LeShin. That's fantastic. That is beyond anything that I could have ever conceived in my head. LeShun.
And he's a junior, so his father is also named LeShun.
Now, let me ask you this. I thought Junior went out of style. Why isn't he the second? We found out yesterday, Joe Webb is Joe Webb the third.
There's a lot. I usually go around life assuming that there's almost nobody who's a junior or a third. Unless you're traveling like the Boston Brahmin circuit where everybody is so and so the 15th. But the NFL has shown there's a ton of people who are juniors and thirds and seniors, and that surprises me.
I mean, there's a LeShun Daniels Sr. out there.
Anyway, it never occurred to me to name my child after myself, I suppose. That's what I should say.
I mean, it would occur to me. I wouldn't do it, but it would occur to me. As, the narcissist I am, that would just make me feel really good. LeShun. If P. Ryan is out and Maxwell and Marshall are both out, which I don't think that P. Ryan is going to be out, but I'm just saying keep an eye on the situation.
This is the worst part about fantasy, don't you agree? That this guy it's December 11th.
I had never heard of him before.
Heard of this guy in our lives. and he could very well swing a fantasy championship. Like that is an annoying part about fantasy.
Sure, but this is why people watch the Pat Mayo experience. Listen, even coming out of that game, most people didn't even realize that P. Ryan got hurt in the fourth quarter because no one was watching that blowout. Then all of a sudden, he hurts his stomach. This guy is on the field. I'm just putting this on people's radar that if you play in if you play in like a 10-team league, this isn't going to affect you in the slightest. But there are people still alive in 14-team leagues, in 16-team leagues, and the waiver wire is kind of thin in that league. LeShun, he's 0% owned. So even if you want to make a spec pickup on him and it turns out that P. Ryan's okay or Marshall's okay, then you can drop him. But this could be a player out of nowhere that could get 20 touches next week.
I agree. No, I agree with everything you just said. I just think it's annoying that is a reality.
No, I would agree with you on that. Is there anyone that you really want to go into here? Like, we'll get to it when we get to the quarterbacks and talk about some of those injuries, but like Elijah McGuire.
I'm still on the JD McKissic bandwagon, particularly if Davis misses more time, but whatever.
Mike Davis hurt his ribs, but apparently he's going to be fine. One of the main reasons that McKissic actually outsnapped Davis yesterday, 31-30, but that was a complete game flow situation where they were getting blown out for a lot of the game, so they had their pass-catching running back on the field. Mike Davis actually ran the ball quite effectively and looked good running the ball, and against the Rams next week, the way to really get to the Rams is to run the ball between the tackles. So we'll see. I think Mike Davis ends up having a really nice rebound week against the Rams.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And that's where I would go with it. Adrian Peterson, we don't even know if he's going to play again for either this season, the rest of his career, but in the 2 games that Adrian Peterson has missed, Kerr Winning has 36 carries. He has at least 85 yards in each of those games, so he's someone he's a low-end running back too. What do you make of the Rod Smith, Alfred Morris situation? Because we were talking about this before the show, and one of the reasons that I lost in my home league is because I didn't play Rod Smith, but the thing was I was never going to play Rod Smith. He just happened to score 25 points on my bench, but there was no circumstance where I looked at my starters and be like, you know what, I'm going to play Rod Smith. But like even going forward, I know the matchup against the Raiders is really good, but it was like 2 really big plays for Rod Smith. Like if next week Alfred Morris outscores him, would you be stunned?
I would be surprised if Alfred Morris didn't outscore him.
Yeah, so it's one of those situations where if you played Rod Smith, congratulations, and he has been fantasy useful, but I wouldn't expect any sort of I wouldn't, put it this way, I wouldn't go to the waiver wire being like, you know what, Rod Smith is going to win me the championship.
And he only has value this week. After this week, you cut him, so.
Because Zeke is back week 16.
Zeke comes back after this week, so he has use for you this week and nothing else, so.
True. I mean, at this point, unless you need to play Wayne Gallman, which I pray to God, put it this way, if you need to play Wayne Gallman, there's a very small chance you're still alive in the fantasy playoffs. But, I would start picking up. I would just have James Conner on my bench. I would have Austin Eckler on my bench. I'd have Charkandrick West. Just guys, if the starter goes out, they're going to get 20 touches. Almost like the Gio Bernard situation from yesterday. And he was good yesterday.
Certainly. Or even Charkandrick West, for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, you can't play Charkandrick. Yeah, well, I mentioned Charkandrick West. If Hunt goes out, you can't just play Charkandrick West.
Well, you can.
What sort of league are you playing in where you're playing Charkandrick West? That's a league where that's not like your team in my league would have 2 wins.
Like picking him up as a backup where you know if Hunt were to get hurt, you'd get 20 touches from him.
Yeah, I already said that. And then you're just like, oh yeah, play Charkandrick West. He's a top 10 running back. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
I said nothing of the sort, and no fair-minded viewer will think I did.
Peyton Barber, I have at 5. He's still going to be in some sort of split. Like, it was the 3-way split yesterday. Barber played the most snaps. Charles Sims played the second most because they were losing for a lot of that game. And whenever they're losing, Charles Sims tends to be on the field. Then Doug Barton played 1 less snap than Charles Sims. It was like 31, 20, 19 in terms of overall breakdown. I would think that Peyton Barber ends up playing around 50% of the snaps, but honestly, how useful is that really when you're Peyton Barber in this Tampa offense?
And you assume that maybe Tampa will be down by quite a bit this week, and I don't know how much running is going to be involved.
True. I'm really curious to see what happens with this Mir Abdullah situation, though, because the rumors are he was a healthy scratch yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
I just assumed he was hurt.
No, he was dealing with a neck injury, and then all of a sudden, before the game, they were like, yeah, he can probably play, but we're going to sit him anyway. And if he sits, every time Mir Abdullah doesn't play, Theo Riddick is a legit top 15 running back.
Yeah, Theo Riddick's really, really good. I'm not surprised by that.
And Damian Williams, got to be on watch for him. Obviously, he's not going to play in the Monday Nighter, but if he does return, I'm not sure what it does to Kenyon Drake, but like Kenyon Drake is like a lock and loaded top 10 back right now because of the amount of like receptions he's going to get out of the backfield because Jay Cutler doesn't throw the ball down the field. If Williams comes back, they're back in a bit of a split. I would still think that Drake ends up on the high end of that split, but I don't know if that's 80-20, 70-30, 60-40. It's really hard to say, and it would hurt his overall upside. He would drop from like a low-end, mid-tier running back 1 down into that like mid-tier running back 2, low-end running back 2 situation. What sort of impact do you think that Damian Williams would have on Kenyon Drake when he comes back, if he comes back?
Enough to make them both borderline unplayable, which is annoying.
Yeah.
Because Drake is the better back, but if they're going to keep giving Williams opportunities, then you're just throwing up your hands and hoping that Drake gets the right carries for you, and that would be aggravating as a fantasy owner. I think all he does is cannibalize the both of them.
Wide receiver waiver wire pickup power rankings for Week 15. Honestly, there are two guys you should pick up. Number one, by a landslide, is Marquise Goodwin, who is still unowned in 70% of leagues, which is crazy because he might be a top 15 wide receiver the rest of the season. That's what I wrote in the column last week. I'm not moving off of that. Just look at what he did again. The guy gets every target from Jimmy Garoppolo, goes over 100 yards. He has the speed to break one deep. They're using him on short routes. They're using him in the red zone, for Christ's sake. Like, this is a spot to really let Marquise Goodwin help you win a fantasy championship. And it's not like the matchups get super dire. He's playing Tennessee this week. He's going to be fine. He's number one. D.D. Westbrook is number two. I would still be curious to see the Allen Hurns situation, just because not that Allen Hurns is better than D.D. Westbrook. We saw D.D. Westbrook look excellent yesterday. He's looked really good. Double-digit fantasy points, 3 straight weeks now. He finally got his first career touchdown yesterday. He's a very, very good player. But with Allen Hurns comes back, it might bump him to fewer snaps, just more targets to go around. So I would be a little bit worried about that, but I still think that D.D. Westbrook's a top 30 receiver the rest of the season. Then you look at the rest of the guys on this list, and it's your, smorgasbord of all the random losers you could have picked up all season. Robert Woods should be making his return. He's still dealing with the shoulder injury. He's playing the Seahawks. He's probably a top 30 option for this week if he's proven to be healthy, so monitor practice, but he's now available in around 40% of leagues. Some people had to cut ties with him. He could be available. So he's sort of on an island by himself here. He's closer to D.D. Westbrook than he is to Josh Doxson, who's next on this list. Then it's like P. Rich, Wallace, Fuller, Curse, Coleman, Kendall Wright, who had like 10 catches yesterday, but I wouldn't count on that every game. Travis Benjamin, Trent Taylor. Are there any one of those guys outside of the top 3 that really excite you?
Excite me. I mean, I think from what we saw, the Ravens' offense is starting to score 44 2 weeks ago and 39. Mike Wallace becomes interesting, but no. I mean, I'm certainly not delighted. Maybe Curse in a game where the Jets are getting routed. Maybe Curse does well against the Saints. You can see a lot of garbage time potential there. I'm glad you have Goodwin at 1. Goodwin, like you said, he can totally win you a fantasy championship. Him and Garoppolo are like Drew Bennett back in the day, right?
Drew Bennett and Billy Volek?
Yeah, they're basically that's who they've become for this season.
Yeah, listen, if you had Marquise Goodwin, good on you. Like I said, Tim mentioned, you can ride him out to a fantasy championship. Let's go to tight ends very quickly. There's not really much to say here. Eric Ebron's been really good over the last month. I have him at 1. Charles Clay, Ricky Seals-Jones, Jason Witten. Who does Witten get? The Raiders this week. So that's a really good matchup. Steven Anderson, Njoku, O.J. Howard, Josh Hill. Josh Hill in a good matchup against the Jets. Looks like Kobe Fleener might miss another week. Ben Watson has a good matchup against Cleveland, but who knows with any of these guys. Your boy Julius Thomas. If Zach Ertz sits again, play Trey Burton. Trey Burton would become the number 1 pickup on this list, but if Zach Ertz was that close to playing on Sunday, I assume that he's going to end up playing in Week 15. There's no one tight end that you have to go out and get this week. Gronk's going to be back. Ertz is likely to be back. You have your tight end going. None of these guys will likely be a top 10 option this week.
No, absolutely not.
All right, quarterbacks. This is where the fun news comes in. So let's start with your guy. Josh McCown breaks his left hand, his non-throwing hand, but it looks like he may miss the rest of the season. There's no official word on that yet.
He's definitely missing the rest of the season.
Why? He broke his non-throwing hand.
Doesn't matter. It's time. Well, you know what I think it's time.
You think the Hackencuss should come in?
I certainly do. We saw nothing out of Petty yesterday against a brutal Broncos team that makes me think that he should get the job. There's 3 games left in the season. Maybe not this week. Maybe he needs a week to get ready. So this week you go with Petty. And then for weeks 16 and 17 against the Chargers and Patriots, yeah, I want to see Hackenberg play. And I think there's a non-zero chance of that.
Oh, man. If Hackencuss plays against the Chargers, he might be worse than Nate Peterman.
Oh, I got a pretty good feeling about things.
About the Cust?
No, about Hackenberg. I mean, it would be vindication. But he's not going to play this week, I don't think, much of a chance. Although he will be have to be the backup. Like, they'll have to activate him as the backup. So,
well, this throws a wrench. And you talked about Jermaine Garbage time. I'm not even playing that game. If Josh McCown is not playing and Bryce Petty, I mean, he's going to be the heartbreaker to your team because Robbie Anderson is like borderline unplayable now. Jermaine Kearse, you really can't play him. Elijah McGuire got hurt in the backfield. No word yet on if he's going to miss the game, but if he does, like, hey, that opens up a situation where you can play either Forte or Powell. Nope. Petty sucks too much, and Hackencuss is even worse.
Well, you don't know that because he hasn't played now.
Yes, yeah. Hackenberg is so good, Tim, that they drafted him 2 years ago and he's yet to play a game.
Okay, well, why don't we just reserve judgment till we actually see him play?
I think we can pretty much assess the situation here. If he was any good whatsoever, he probably would have been in uniform by now.
Yeah, but this coaching staff is incompetent and doesn't know what it's doing. So.
Yes. That's how it works. Todd Bowles, Coach of the Year.
Todd Bowles is terrible. We saw it again yesterday.
They're gonna re-sign him to a 5-year extension.
Oh, wouldn't be shocking. I live in a world where I'm not allowed to get rid of Todd Bowles or Brian Kelly. I've accepted my fate.
All right, the other situations to monitor when it comes to the next full situation, I just think that
one of the up and play him. He is a plug-and-play replacement for Wentz, in my opinion.
He's a potential plug-and-play. I think I have him 6. And the rankings look like this for streamers for the week. Aaron Rodgers is number 1 because he's available in 41% of leagues. I would play him over Nick Foles. Would you?
I would play him over any quarterback, and I mean that, any quarterback.
Even Brady?
Even Brady this week.
Well, that's bad news for Aaron Rodgers' prospects for Week 15. He's at Carolina. So I go Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Garoppolo against Tennessee, Jameis Winston, Case Keenum, Blake Bortles, Nick Foles, Tyrod Taylor, Joe Flacco.
I think I would bump Flacco up a touch, Tyrod down a touch. I mean, but this is on the margins. I like Foles better than Bortles. I like Bowles better than Keenum actually this week.
So Foles is just going to be a fucking disaster then, isn't he?
I think Nick Foles is going to have the Giants are so bad. I mean, I just think that the Eagles will absolutely win the game big and then basically seal up everything they need to seal up, and then it'll ride off into the sunset.
Anyway, my point about the Eagles' offense in terms of why it was so successful this year is because Wentz was so good, and he was very efficient, and he was good at getting the ball spread around. So basically, you could play Elshon every week, you could play Ertz every week, you could play Aguilar every week, you could kind of roll, you could play Wentz every week, obviously, you could kind of roll the dice on one of those upside running backs, and in any given week, you could have picked right. Like, there's been a couple of LeGarrette Blount weeks, there's been Corey Clement weeks. There's just been so much offense that's been able to sustain so many viable fantasy options, and hell, even like, in 25% of the games, rolling the dice on Torrey Smith kind of worked out a little bit for you as well. I just think that capability is now gone. Like, you want nothing to do with Torrey Smith. You don't really want a ton to do with the backfield, like you mentioned, outside of Jay Ajayi, who for the first time since becoming a Philadelphia Eagle yesterday, played more than 50% of the backup the running back snaps.
Continue. And that will definitely continue as we go forward.
Definitely is tough to say. And if he's getting 50% of the backfield snaps, that's still not great.
Without Wentz, I think you're going to see closer to 60 this week, and I think you're going to see him fed the ball more often than not.
I mean, you could see LeGarrette Blount be fed the ball as well. That's not out of the realm of possibility. If I had to play one, it would be Ajayi, but he's no lock for any of this stuff. And when it comes to starting your fantasy guys, like Elshon drops from a low-end number 1 all the way down to, a number 2, like an untrustworthy number 2. Like Aguilar is, I would start him over Robbie Anderson at this point with Bryce Petty thrown to him and Lattimore locking him down, but I have no faith that Aguilar is going to do anything. Zach Ertz is probably a start when he comes back, but the biggest thing about Zach Ertz was his consistency and his floor week to week. Well, I do think that he's going to be a top 10 play. I don't think that he has much of a floor anymore. Do you?
No, I agree with you.
So it just kind of impacts everyone down a rung in terms of that offense, and then you don't get sort of the periphery players that you would have gotten the Eagles' offense anyway. So I just think it's not a disastrous situation for their offense, but it's significantly decreased in terms of the fantasy output that you should expect.
Oh, absolutely. When you go from a guy who's in the competition for MVP of the league to a really good backup, but a backup nonetheless, of course, it's going to have a deleterious effect on every offensive position.
I mean, you've already kind of claimed that Nick Foles might be the new MVP, so...
I think I'm laying down a marker. I think Nick Foles will be pretty good.
Poor Nick Foles, man. He's going to be out of the league next week. Who's their backup now?
I haven't the foggiest.
Philadelphia Eagles depth chart. Let's see who their third stringer is. This will be fun, because we're going to be getting a whole lot of that guy soon. Maybe you should play the Giants defense next week, Tim.
No, I think the Eagles defense is still the way to play it.
Oh, Nate Sudfeld. Remember him?
Oh, barely.
I believe he was the Skins. I think he was the Skins backup at some point. And then I vaguely recall him potentially starting a game for the Eagles, like 2 years ago, maybe last year.
I'm trying to see his career stats. Well, they do have him in Redskins uniform on an Eagles background. So
I feel like I remember him. Maybe it was a tight end who shared a name that used to play for the Patriots. What was that guy's name? Remember him?
No, I don't actually.
He was just some loser tight end backup for like Gronk. Like when Gronk was out, it was like, oh, play this guy, and he was terrible. Thrilling stuff here. I want to see if this guy played a game now. Pro Football Reference. Let's see if he has a page. Oh, he does have a page. That's positive news. Career stats, none. No, it must have just been preseason games that I remember him from. Anyway, that's your new backup and probably your Eagles starting quarterback in Week 16 after Nick Foles breaks both of his legs or something, or decides he's too Anderkirk and doesn't want to play.
Zach Sudfeld played tight end for the Jets.
Sure.
His brother.
That's his brother, is it?
Correct.
All right. Anyway, so we covered McCown, we covered Ertz, or we covered Wentz, sorry. Where else is it? Nate Peterman. He got concussed him. Tell the truth. And we got some Joe Webb. Tyrod's probably going to be back this week, I would think.
I would think so. Listen, they have a chance to make the playoffs, so they need him in as much as possible.
But every time they decide that they're in the running to make the playoffs, they bench him.
I know. Well, they play the Dolphins now 2 of the last 3 weeks.
That's positive news.
It is. They can get 2 wins, but all the Dolphins were scrappy last week, but they still have the Patriots looming next week to sort of put them to the sword.
Well, according to Mike Mularkey, Marcus Mariota is playing on a wonky knee. Now, do you think that's true, or he just sucks?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense as to why Mariota looked so bad, and particularly bad yesterday. And also, what is Mularkey doing? If you've got your franchise QB out there playing on an injured knee, you're out of your mind. Put your backup in. That's crazy. In an NFC game, when you still can win your division just by beating Jacksonville head-to-head, why are you risking Marcus Mariota and his knee when he's hurt? That's such terrible coaching. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I would be livid were I a Titans fan.
He's a bad coach. I think this just might be excuses to kind of pass the buck on why Mariota's been so terrible.
I don't know. I usually bad coaches are not afraid to throw their quarterbacks in front of the bus to protect themselves.
Now, only Ben McAdoo does that. How'd that work out for him?
Well, no. Jay Gruden does it on a weekly basis.
Yeah, but they just hate Kirk Cousins.
That's true.
So, let me ask you this then. If we're dealing with banged-up Mariota who now has more interceptions than touchdowns this year, which is pathetic, after he's been... You know what? Maybe... 2 guys who broke their legs last year, maybe it takes more than 6 months to recover from that. That could be a thing.
Just people should remember that when they have David Johnson at number 1 or 2 in fantasy next year, that he is not going to be a superstar out of the gate. Stuff like those serious sorts of injuries, they matter.
Well, David Johnson had a fractured wrist. He didn't have a broken fibula.
No, but he had a broken bone. The breaks do take some time to heal, for guys to trust themselves.
You just want any excuse, because the 1 year you buy into David Johnson, he breaks his wrist, and now you want to be all off of him next year. David Johnson will be fine.
He'd be fine. But I was saying yesterday on Twitter, unless Ben Roethlisberger retires, Antonio Brown has to be the number 1 pick in fantasy.
Well, Tim, let me remind you, most things you say on Twitter tend to be proven very false very quickly.
Okay, fine.
Even when you're taking the safest of safe opinions, it tends to flip. So I'd watch out with what you say on Twitter.
Well, I will not watch out what I've said.
Well, it's good that you're not deleting those tweets either. But
yeah,
when it comes to Mariota, realistically, in a playoff game, who would you rather have starting for you this season, Mariota or Bortles? Because I would take Bortles.
No, it's got to be Mariota.
Why does
Only
it gotta
Bortles,
be Mariota? He's been significantly worse than Bortles this year.
because we all know Bortles is worse.
Yes, but here's the big difference between Mariota and Bortles and how those two teams work right now. Jacksonville knows Bortles isn't very good, so they structure their offense around knowing that key fact. Tennessee doesn't. Tennessee's like, Marcus Mariota is awesome. Go win us some games, pal. And like, he's terrible.
That is because he's hurt. That's disconcerting. I mean, the Titans should be able to run the ball down the throat of any team they play, and should be.
But they don't.
But they don't. Yeah, one should hope they get into the playoffs in the first round, and if they aren't at home, they play, KC or somebody, that they just put the ball into Murray and Henry's gut 50 times and try to eke out a victory. It's their only path.
I mean, that's their strategy in every game, especially against like really bad. Like again, that was one. Thank God that made my Super 7, was Arizona. Like, Arizona's not good, and their strategy was, let's try to milk the clock and win by a field goal. That's what they did against the Browns. Like, the Tennessee is terrible. Like, they are the bet-against team of the first round. Like, you might think it's Jacksonville. You might think it's whoever gets the wild card, and if it's the Bills, it's probably the Bills. But, like, Tennessee is going to get some respect on the betting line, and they should get none.
Yeah, I mean, I still think I would take the Titans against certain teams, but but I'm higher on them than you. Like, and I have been.
I don't understand what you have seen from them this season to think to yourself that they're any good whatsoever.
Like, they still have won 9 games. Like, they're not a terrible team, or 8 games, whatever it is.
Well, but you have the weighted DVOA page out. Where's Tennessee rank on that list?
On weighted DVOA, let me pull them up here. Where are the Titans?
Check bottom 5, see if they're down there, just by starting.
They're 21st.
They're the 20. So they're a very mediocre team, and they're worse than average. Like, you call the Chargers mediocre, and the Chargers are 11th, and you think the Titans are good, and they're 21st. So which is it? Are you going to believe it or not? Is this just another one of these situations where you refuse to believe the numbers that you back up when it reflects your point, you're all over it. When it doesn't, oh no, they're still good though.
Would I say the Chargers are a better team right now? Of course.
The Chargers have been a better team all year.
Well, that's not true, but they are a better team right now. Do I trust the Chargers? No, listen, you can't trust the Chargers in big games. If you have been trusting them your whole life, you've been let down a lot. You can't. And there's no ill will against the Chargers. I got nothing against them.
Sounds like you do. It sounds like you have a personal vendetta with the Chargers.
I don't, but I don't trust them. They haven't earned any trust over the years. Like, there are 3 teams in the league: the Lions, the Browns, and the Chargers, and the Bengals. So there's 4 actually, and the Bengals, who, as soon as you believe in them, will rip out your hearts. They've been doing it for 50 years. Like, that hasn't changed. That's not going to change. That's just who these teams are. It's baked into their DNA, if you will. So just buyer beware.
Streaming defenses for week 15. I got some 16s here for you, too. They're all up in the column on dkplaybook.com as well. If you're projecting for week 15, I put this out last week. I like Denver as the top pickup. Siege and I were actually talking about it on the Draftkings show last week. I didn't want to play Denver's defense. I didn't love them against the Jets. And he was like, hey, I was like, I really like them next week against Indianapolis. And he was like, you know what? This always happens. Just play the team that you really like the following week this week, because that's generally when they go off in Denver's defense. Highest scoring defense of the week. So thank you, Siege, for that tip, because I ended up playing Denver's defense. But I have them at number 1, the Saints against the Jets, and Tom Petty at number 2. The Bears against the Lions, Washington against Arizona, Tennessee against San Francisco, and Detroit against Chicago would be my top 6 streamers for week 15. For week 16, I have Chicago against Cleveland, New Orleans against Atlanta, Denver against Washington, Kansas City against Miami, Washington against Denver, Detroit against the Cincinnati Bengals. So if you're looking for like streamers for the rest of the season, Denver's approximately unowned in around 40% of leagues. They're still a pretty popular defense. They look pretty good the rest of the season. So does New Orleans. So does Chicago. Those would be my top 3. One of those teams should be available in your league. All 3 of those are attacking defenses, good defensive lines, and have pretty good matchups up against soft offensive lines throughout the final 2 weeks. And that's, again, what you want to target. You don't want to target the Bills against the Colts in a game where the Colts are going to run the ball 40 times. Bad idea if you're trying to project fantasy points. I really want to hammer that home to people. Yeah,
well, you can be sure that lesson will not be learned.
No, it won't. Yeah, the Bears are terrible. You got to play Cincinnati's defense. And the weird thing was, hey, Chicago's a bad team, really, to stream defense against anyway, because either Trubisky's playing well and they're scoring points, and if he shows any signs of playing horribly, which he usually does, they just run the ball no matter what. And it's so hard to generate fantasy points against teams running the ball. It's incredibly tough. You want people passing all the time, and generally speaking, the Bears don't do that.
Yeah, no, that's all very well said. I'm trying to think, I actually wouldn't mind Dallas's defense next week either. I know you don't have them in the ranking, but against the Raiders, I don't have much faith in the Raiders. Would not surprise me if Dallas has a pretty decent game.
Oh, so now that you're off on the Raiders probably win. Remember the last time you gave up on the Raiders and they beat Kansas City?
Yes.
So that probably happens again next week. Raiders and Sunday night, lock them in.
I need to have a big week.
Yeah, well, I mean, you basically called your lead. You basically said I couldn't win. I think I moved ahead of you again in the spread picks.
I said this was my chance to put you away, and I whiffed at that opportunity.
Although I don't know if the gap is all that big. Going into the Monday Nighter, I'm 9-6 against the spread. I
have 4 wins. I have 4 wins correct right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Going into the Monday Nighter, but we're different on the Monday Nighter at least. So.
And we were different on the Sunday Nighter. You got one back on me with you. It was looking really bad for you, but then you hit the Eagles. I had the Rams. Then you hit the Ravens, and I had the Steelers.
Yes, that slightly turned around in my favor, but that just salvaged from the wreckage. What was a terrible day.
All right. Before we get out of here, there was one final piece of chatter that I wanted to get to, and you had told me that I had been texting one of our friends, and she brought up something, I had been passing it along, that you said that Chef Boyardee was authentic Italian food, and as an Italian, she found that very offensive.
Chef Boyardee is authentic. I mean, Chef Boyardee is an Italian person, or was, sorry.
Didn't General Mills start Chef Boyardee?
I don't know. They didn't start Chef Boyardee. It was opened by a gentleman named Hector Boiardi, who was born Italian. An Italian-born chef.
Your mass-produced canned Italian food. I don't think it's super authentic Italian. I'm not going to lie to you. Anyway, it got to this point where she revealed to me, after speaking with you, that you microwaved leftovers. And what I mean by this is, like, if you take a Hungry Man, let's use it as an example. That's something that you cook in the microwave, that you won't eat it all and you'll re-microwave it again later. So food that is meant to be cooked in the microwave, you'll reheat in the microwave and eat that as leftovers. I mean, like, anything that you eat out of the microwave anyway and cook in it is essentially leftovers to begin with. That's disgusting.
I feel like I need to mount a defense of myself.
Go ahead. Floor is yours.
Okay, well, first, I mean, half of the story is when it comes to leftovers, 99% of leftovers get microwaved to begin with. So it should be no surprise that a person microwaves his or her leftovers. And since I'm often cooking with a microwave oven, it's not surprising that if I make let's say I'm really hungry and I make 2 Michelinas and I don't finish the 2. I only want to eat one by the time it's finished. Well, then I put it back in the fridge and then I re-microwave my Michelina. Like that's not uncommon. I mean, if I've cooked something in the microwave, if it's left over, what am I supposed to do? Would you put something you cooked in the microwave in the oven to heat it up? No, of course not. You've already cooked it in the microwave once. You just recook it in the microwave. That's how it's done. And yes, there's nothing wrong with Chef Boyardee heating it up twice. If you open a big can of like ravioli, and his ravioli is fantastic. If you cook it up and make the ravioli and you don't want to eat it all, then you heat it up the rest of it later on. Or if you heated it up and then you got busy and you forgot to eat it, you reheat it in the microwave. That's what's done. Are you there?
Yeah. That's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, I knew you were going to say that. And that's why you brought it up, just to mock me about it. But I feel very strongly about this.
Well, I've lost my appetite, and that'll do it on the Pat Mayo experience for the Week 15 Waiver Wire Pickup Power Rankings and Week 14 and our cursed recap. So I want to say thank you, even though you've disgusted us all. Tim Andergust.
Tim Andergust.
That is not my name.
Well, you really know how to hit to the core of making people sick. Whether it's your picks and they're on the same side of you, and then they're disgusted, or you bring up reheating frozen dinners twice. Oh my God. Ugh.
This stuff is some of the best-selling food in the country, so you can make fun of it all you want, but this is what the people are eating, and I speak for the people.
Well, I mean, that's true, but you also have to realize, especially in America, I mean, after living there, and then you see the percentages, but you don't get quite a real grasp of it until you're there, just the amount of obesity that exists in America. And this is a
I'm not in the
leading
business
contributor.
of fat-shaming people like you are.
I mean, it's unhealthy. It's not about fat shaming. Being
That's
obese
one
is
thing
not
I
something
noticed in the States that really annoyed me the most back in Miami last week is that those damn calorie counts are on everything, and that really makes me mad.
Yeah, well, in Miami, if you don't look good, you better get out of town.
Well, that was not my impression. My impression in Miami, people were just letting it all hang out, whether they looked good or they didn't.
Ah, good for them. And the freedom to walk around as a big fat man.
Yeah, I thought President Trump was going to roll back some of these needless regulations, and it hasn't seemed to happen yet.
I mean, President Trump has really let you down, hasn't he?
On this factor, I would have wished that he would repeal that needless trans fat ban and would get rid of this calorie count nonsense.
Listen, we've been over this 100 times. I love the calorie count thing. I think it's great.
I prefer it to be gone.
As someone who adds up their calories throughout the course of the day to be able to manage them and be able to project out the future meals that I want to eat, for lunch, for dinner, for some sort of snack, I find it very helpful.
Well,
I don't understand how it hurts you in the slightest.
I don't like the state forcing restaurants to.
No. You just don't like that you're going to eat it either way, and it makes you feel bad that you're eating the most unhealthy thing possible.
This is not all about my own personal.
Yes, it is. Everything you do is about your personal being. You have no problem with anything that doesn't affect you personally, and you take everything personally, like the projector lights.
I saw one of those the other night. I was very angry, and people agreed with me when they saw it.
Okay, then go hang your own lights, Tim.
They're already hung. I mean, what do you want me to say?
Go to your neighbor's place. Offer to put them up for them.
No.
All right. So don't do it then. Be a coward.
I'm not a coward. I'm brave. I keep my tweets up.
You're just a hero. Anyway, I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME on Twitter. Remember to vote in the Custies. You can get the link on wherever you're watching or listening to this on Facebook.com/thepme or up on my Twitter at the PME or on DKPlaybook.com. I will have them in all my articles this week. You have till December 18th to make your voice heard for the Custy Awards. And I'm not going to lie to you. It's tough to really come up with the one that you want to pick from each of these. What do you think is the one that's going to win the most, if you had to guess?
The New York Giants winning the Super Bowl.
Oh, that's mine. That was my pick.
Yeah.
I mean, I have more bad takes than that. I really think that the very last one. What is the name of Cuss Corner? Is Cuss Corner its name? Yes or no? I feel like yes is going to win in the biggest landslide.
I don't know. You're hyping the chorizo one quite a bit.
I didn't even vote for that one.
Well, you've been hyping it, though. So
What do you mean I've been hyping it?
like you've been using it as like the photo on the thing.
I don't really think that's hyping it.
Yeah, you're singling out that question.
Well, I've used like 8 different of the questions. It's just showing people different options.
An esoteric reading of your texts indicates that perhaps that's what you're trying to do.
Well, I didn't even vote for that one.
Well, of course you wouldn't. It's all part of the game.
Is it part of the game?
I don't know, but I'm looking forward to this show. So it'll be like a roast where I may not say anything till the very end of the show, and it just.
Oh no, you're gonna have to after we reveal each of the awards. I'm gonna try to get a special panel together too to do the show.
Then reveal the people I would expressly not like to thank.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, that will do it. Good luck in your fantasy playoffs. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.